Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another community conversation brought to you by the Haitian Times. Tonight, we're doing something we're calling a community health check because of all the different crises and trauma that our community has been experiencing over the past year and a half or so on a daily basis with COVID, with the ongoing violence, gun violence in Haiti, and now the latest blow that we're seeing in terms of the assassination of President Jovenel Moise. So the Haitian Times had planned to have a conversation around our well-being, our mental health, our physical health to begin with. But in light of the situation this past week, it made sense for us to move it up. So tonight we'll chat, just touch on a few things that we know are important to us, our community, as far as processing what's going on. And I'm joined by a panel of folks from our community who can give us different perspectives and hopefully walk away with some guidance as to how to move forward to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. Before I introduce our panel, I'd like to say a thank you to our sponsors for this evening, belmarchand.com, SUNY Downstate, Hope Haitian Americans United for Progress, based in Brooklyn and Queens, and Haitian American Alliance, also based in Brooklyn. With that, I'll go into our panel. Again, we do have a lot to cover. And so throughout the evening, if you have a question or some observations you'd like to make, please make sure to put
No,
it in the chat.
okay, good.
Okay. While Bishop Sansarik is getting himself settled in, I'd like to start by introducing our panel, starting with Dr.
Yes, all
Pardo.
right, good.
Dr. Christina Pardo, I'm doing this in alphabetical order, is a physician advocate who is currently the Director of Health Equity and Vice Chair of Quality and Innovation in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, right here in Central Brooklyn. Dr. Pardo has completed medical programs and residencies at a variety of universities, including Howard University, the Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School in New Jersey, and the International Health School at Boston University. She has decided to dedicate her career to obstetrics and gynecology, and her desire to work with underserved and immigrant populations is what led her to her residency at SUNY Downstate, where she currently serves. She works actively with community-based organizations and is the Director of Strategic Planning and Development at Life of Hope, where she has also founded Santé C'est la Vie, a program to address the unique barriers of care faced by immigrant communities. Welcome again, Dr. Pardo. We have with us Sohami Pinar. Sohami Pinar is a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner for the last 3 years, but she has been in the mental health field since 2008. She is based in New York. Sohami has worked with people who have developmental challenges as well as those struggling with drug abuse and psychosis. While she was working as a forensic nurse for the New York State Department of Mental Health, she realized then how much our community needed representation at a higher level. That's when she began her journey to teach our community more about mental health. And she does that partly through her company that she started, Awareness LLC, which aims to reach more of our people with in-person events that impart information on mental health topics such as depression and anxiety. Up next is Elsie Serri. Elsie is the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director of Haitian Americans United for Progress. It's a community-based organization serving the immigrant communities of the New York Tri-State area since 1975. Under Elsie's leadership, Hope has carried out a multi-million-dollar capital campaign, which has gained significant support from New York State and city governments. The New York Times has featured Elsie in her writings on the appropriate responses to the devastating earthquake that shook Haiti in 2010, and Hope has removed numerous awards and commendations for its dedication to servicing our community. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Hope was a pillar of support and resource for the communities it serves and beyond. Elsie, welcome. It's good to see you again. We have Bishop Sansarik with us, a well-known faith leader in the Haitian community and beyond. He has served from 1971 to 1993 as a parish priest in the Church of Sacred Heart in Queens, and then he was assigned to the Church of St. Jerome in Brooklyn, right here on Newkirk Avenue in Nostrand, where he served as pastor for 13 years. He was ordained as an auxiliary bishop of the same diocese in 2006 and assigned to reside at the Church of St. Gregory, still in Brooklyn. Welcome, Bishop Sansarik. Last but not least is our own Gary Pierre-Pierre, ça c'est Muncai. Gary is a Pulitzer Prize winning multimedia and entrepreneurial journalist. In 1999, he left the New York Times to launch the Haitian Times. And we, of course, became the diaspora's English language publication dedicated to serving the Haitian diaspora. Gary is also the co-founder of the City University Graduate School of Journalism's Center for Community and Ethnic Media and a senior producer at CUNY TV. Welcome, everyone. There's so much to talk about. And to start, I'd like to go just around the screen here as I'm looking at each of you to share your reflections on how you felt personally as a Haitian American when you heard the news of the assassination of President Moise last Wednesday. I'd like to start with Christina. Christina, you're first on my screen, so you go ahead.
Hi, sure. Well, thank you for the introduction. Hello to all of our panelists and everybody that's watching. Map salut tout moun kap gade sur Facebook or Zoom. Tonight, first I want to make sure I acknowledge where I am now. We call our Life of Hope Studio A, and of course the work I get to do to the hospital at SUNY Downstate here in the community. My reflections, as I said, that Wednesday, I guess exactly 1 week ago, just stunned, shocked, because this has been already a challenging and difficult year with COVID and the health crises that have recently been happening in Haiti, the increased violence and kidnapping, and then serving this community, you know, both through the hospital and in the community, and understanding the challenges that we already face. And for me, having, I've worked also actively in Haiti for over 10 years with different organizations. And it's the first, and I have a lot of friends and colleagues and family in Haiti. And it's the first time I have seen people to be stunned, speechless, as to what has happened, and really just a fear and unknown about what is next. Even despite everything that has happened, I really felt that it was a different response compared to previously. And we actually had a program here that day for our English as Second Language course. And, you know, to watch the reflection, we allowed everybody to get on the microphone and reflect, and to watch the reflection and the fear and the concern that everybody had was really very difficult to watch. And I found that since then, even as we've had drips of news and everything, it has become even more difficult because of the complexity of the stories that we were finding, the different aspects to it, and the increased questions now coming from others. I found that in the beginning, there was a lot of sympathy, you know, and support expressed. And now, you know, some comments or questions where, you know, you have to kind of hold your tongue a little bit about your response, about some of the things people, colleagues, others may remark about what is happening in Haiti. And I think, unfortunately, it may add on to some of the discrimination that have, or the thoughts about the Haitian community, to see what others view as yet again another story, may add some stigma, especially with some of the news that are coming out. So, from the professional to the personal, still many things are difficult to navigate. And I fear it's definitely going to add the stigma and the barriers that our community face. So having a forum like this, so the work that we do here in the community is essential, because it's probably going to be more important now than ever.
Thank you, Christina. So, Hami, let's go to you. Can you share your reflections on or your reaction when you first heard the news last Wednesday?
Sure. First, good evening to everyone, and thank you for having me on here. I'm probably one of the youngest of the panelists on here, so I'll just speak from personal experience in terms of just being in Haiti as a young child. Like, I spent years there. Actually, my childhood, my first language was Creole. My first 3-4 years of life was in Haiti. So I always grew up with a love of the culture. My parents both instilled that in me. And it was really sad to hear that this happened in our country, because at some point you want to feel like Haiti's going to get better. And it seems like it's just trauma after trauma after trauma. But there always seemed like there was this one ceiling that we hadn't hit, and this seemed to be it. So it was defeating, in all honesty, to see that we have another notch against us. And I do agree that we've had to kind of bite our tongues in terms of what other people are saying and navigating around being politically correct. But I literally just felt defeated. And it's the same amongst my friends who are Haitian American or have lent support. It was just, when do we get back that pride and that joy of being the first freed Black nation? Like, is just back to back, and I don't know when it's going to end. But I do agree with Christina that these forums are going to be more important now more than ever moving forward, just so people have a place to vent their frustrations and not think, okay, I have to hold this in, or where do I go?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sohami. Those are all great points. Elsie, I'm curious to know what you saw or what you thought of the reaction personally and through the work that you do at Hope.
Thank you for having me, Gary, Macro the Haitian Times, and thank you for initiating this important dialogue. This has been, I feel that Haiti, especially for people like me who not only work with the Haitians daily, but also have projects that are Haiti-based with the Children of the Love and Serve Haiti and Haiti Relief that we work with. I feel like this past, Haiti's always been an experience, but the past 10 years has been particularly traumatic, from the earthquake to this hurricane, to that hurricane, and in the past 3 years, and I'll always remember this day because this happened on my birthday. July 7, 2018 was the day we were getting ready for the Love and Serve mission, which Haitian Time supports, that taking the kids in Haiti started with the pay lock, burning everything, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to do the mission that summer. And I remember on Tuesday night speaking to one of my cousins, and she called and said, "What are you doing for your birthday tomorrow?" Because my daughter had taken me away. And I said, "Well, I will know tomorrow when I wake up and see what madness you all come up with." And I moved on, because July 7th was the day it all started. And when I got the call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up, I was working. And then I saw a message, "Call me when you're on." And when I called, and she said, a colleague says they assassinated the president of Haiti. I'm like, "You guys always have these dirty jokes." And she goes, "No, seriously, he's assassinated." I went from complete disbelief. I mean, I'm the queen of denial by nature, denying for a long time, and then understanding what happened, what could have brought us through this. And that has always been my question. There's been a lot of violence in Haiti. But if you're in Haiti and work, and that's probably an experience, people who've been in underground, you've learned that there's a whole new side to our people. We're not all violent. We are not all gangsters. Haitians are not all evil. There's so much good in us. And to watch, and you go, where does this come? And, and I'm a person of faith. So my first thing was, you know what, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to pray and say, "God, not only do I need directions on how to handle this myself, I want to pray about some kind of um, to believe, to know what to say. And I have to process it for myself. I have to process it for my child and explain this to her, because understanding as a child of Haitian heritage, and I also have to understand, how do I do this as a community leader? What do I say? I don't have the luxury of saying whatever I want publicly. So to really understand what to do, and it's been a real complete calm and say, okay, God, you're trying to see God's hand through this. But a lot more than anything else, I've been trying to manage my fear of what's going to happen to our people, to the children, to the people. And I feel like the victim is always the people who do not know. Some people even know who the president is. And they're always the people who are going to be hurt the most, because they're the one with the least resources, with the least access. So as personally, as a Haitian woman, and I understand completely what Christina said, trying to get the condolences from everybody and the jabs that come with those condolences. And it's always you guys. What happened to your pride? What happened to the First Nation? You guys taught us how to be free. How did you? And it's hard to explain this, because in a way, many people are right. And also trying to find as much support and resources to be able to address this as a community to the people who come to me for services. So this is the importance of this dialogue to me, particularly to be able to get more insight in what other people are doing, so I can best serve both personally and as a community leader.
Thank you, Elsie. I'm glad you brought up the question of being of faith, and I'd like to hear Bishop Sansarik's take on that in a little bit. But I want to go to Gary, because he has shared through his editorials and different forums on TV that this killing impacted him much harder. It was a harder hit than anything he's seen. And we know, Gary, you've covered a lot of traumatic experiences through your coverage of Haiti over the years. Can you talk a little bit about that, and just, why this is so different for you?
Thanks, Michael. Yes, I'd like to give the audience sort of like a series of events, how this thing unfolded for us. I got a phone call. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock. I don't remember. Frankly, I was deep in sleep, and a correspondent said, apologetically, keep apologizing that for waking me up at this moment, but that the president had been assassinated. In the fog of the moment, and I said, what? Okay. Just go and check with us, check back with us later. And I think I contacted McElvey. I knew I didn't call because I wasn't going to do what was done to me. And I told her, this is what happened. Call me up when you can. And then I couldn't sleep. And in my mind went into overdrive. I started reporting. The reporter in me kicked in, and I started reporting, trying to figure out what happened. And then I haven't had a chance to really reflect on that moment, because we all been working nonstop since then. 10, 12 hours a day, putting out stories. But today, I went out for a walk. I live in New Rochelle, near the Long Island Sound. I walk to just clear my head. And I sat down by the water, trying to breathe in some salt water and looking at the waves, sort of a calming effect. And I'm just thinking that, dude, what's wrong with you? You've seen piles of dead bodies and at the morgue in Haiti. You've seen pigs feasting on corpse on the streets of Haiti. You've seen a colleague get shot to death in front of you. And these things really, you deal with them because, what people don't understand, journalists are wired differently emotionally, I think. Very few things get us, phase us. And then, but this, as you all said, was just different level. I mean, the assassination of a president is no small thing. And I simply wanted to just, reflect upon that and see how we got there. But the more I think about it, and as readers and friends have pointed out to me, that I've kind of been writing about this. I've written that, Jovenel was in an epic battle. The whole word epic battle, I wrote it, but I never really thought about it all that much, but that was foreshadowing death. And so here we are. And as critical as I've been of Moise, And I have been critical of every president. That's my job. And it's not personal. That's what I have to do. And, but I think we didn't have to get there. And I'm going to use all the contacts, all the friends that I have in the media industry to make sure this doesn't go, l'enquête se poursuit. Not another one of those where we're going to wash down the war, that under the rug. Because no, enough is enough. I'm pissed.
Thank you, Gary, for sharing that. Bishop Sansarik, can you share with us what your thoughts are and how maybe you've been helping different parishioners in the community process what happened in the past week?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Like everybody else, I've been absolutely shocked and traumatized by the news. We must admit that for the past 2 years, there have been a lot of bloodshed in Haiti, and this must be kind of a turning point to really educate our people so that they would know that you don't help a country by shedding blood, by killing people. You have to respect people's blood, no bloodshed. And we must remember the motto that our ancestors left us, l'union fait la force. Strengths come from union, but we discover that we have to find the way to be together in that country. Okay. This being said, we must admit that for the past 3 years, there have been a lot of crimes of the simple people, peasant. You know, people have been kicked out of their house, poor people, and their houses have been despoiled. And President Jovenel appeared to have been totally indifferent to their fate. And as a president, you know, he should at least protest and make some effort. So in a way, the government of the country didn't appear to be in his hands because gangs had taken over the government of the country. So his death must also be a kind of a scream to wake us up, so that there are so many good people and even competent people in Haiti who could do a good job, but they have been absolutely discarded from the circles of politics. And the people running the country have been people without conscience, people who seem to be absolutely interested in their own power and in nothing else. Apparently, millions of dollars from Petro-Carib have been wasted. So therefore, his government was very incompetent. Now he's been murdered, it's terrible, but even an American president has also been murdered. And in different countries, Perón and Batista and so many other presidents in other countries, actually it's a rare occurrence in Haiti. The last time that a president was murdered at the time of the American occupation in 1915, Villeboin Guillaume Sam was stabbed. We've been dealing with too many bad governments. So I hope that this will be a turning point, kind of a wake-up call, and that it will be kind of a national prise de conscience, a new awareness, and that so many good people will be able to step in and have their word to say and be heard and not be murdered. So I hope that good thing will come from this drama. Okay.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you so much. You said so many things that we have to really follow up on in a little bit. specifically, having that wake up call and what that could look like for each of us. And we'll circle back on that later. For right now, I wanted to go back to Dr. Prado, Christina, and Sohami. You both mentioned that this could be a time when people feel more stigmatized, or this could set us up for more discrimination later in our communities, right? So having that in mind, like thinking of what people are processing right now, how could we actually deal with that immediate issue? How do we deal with people who say off-color comments or jabs, to us that we have to deal with personally with our kids, our neighbors and communities? How should we be handling that from a mental health well-being perspective?
So I'll start. So I'm not the mental health person, but professional, but I'll make a couple of comments to this, and actually something that has been a central focus of a lot of the work that I do. First thing I'd like to say, when we went back and we mentioned about the where is the pride, which of course we should be proud that we were the first free Black republic. And I would also like to make sure to make the point that, Haiti in many ways was probably the first evidence of structural racism, right? So all the things that happened following the independence with United States and France and everything that led to a very long history of political and economic instability, aspects of neocolonialism, external influences, and all of these things that contribute to how the state that Haiti is in currently, not just Haiti, many other countries. And so I think just like we are educating ourselves here in the United States, in our community here, on the impact of racism and structural racism. And I think that it's important for us to understand that lens when it comes to Haiti and the diaspora. And then that brings us down to the racism and bias. And so being a healthcare professional, we've had a big focus on the disparities that exist. That means when that the Black community or the Hispanic community have increased risk of diseases or disorders compared to other communities. And we know that the root cause of this is racism in our communities, racism and bias between one-on-one. And one aspect of that I think that there needs to be more discussion and work in is the discrimination and bias that is present for certain communities like the Haitian community. So, I like to say, racism goes past race, meaning that there's a certain level of stigma and discrimination that is there that can be based on socioeconomic status. In our community, we know very well, being Haitian, Haitian immigrant. And so I think, number one, for us as a community to understand the ways in which this stigma and discrimination affects our communities, affects every individuals that are seeking care, and for us to
We're losing her mic for a little bit. No, we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Now we can. You're back.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah. So the way that affects the community and those that seek care. So for us to be able to advocate.
We lost you again. Okay. Yeah. So we'll come back to Dr. Prado. So Hami, let's go to you in the meantime. If you could talk through what some, guidance or advice would be for us to deal with those jabs and potential discrimination that we've seen and that we could expect to see more of.
Yes, we are most definitely going to see more jabs. And in all honesty, I feel it's the sense of pride that we who did grow up loving the culture before these times started have to continue to instill in the next generation. Like in high school and before, me and my friends always speak about the fact that it was actually taboo to even say you were Haitian American. But because of the sense of pride that my parents and their parents and my friends who were Haitian American instilled in us, we never once back down. We were still proud all throughout the comments of Haitian booty scratchers and, oh, Haitians are the ones that brought AIDS to America. Never once did we step down from saying we're Haitian. And it's because of the sense of pride and culture and history that our own parents made sure that we knew. So that's what we who do continue to love the culture through ups and downs need to continue passing down. In terms of having a mental health aspect to it, again, forums like these have to be something that's not just when an assassination happens, not just when a pandemic happens. It needs to be something that's ongoing, which is what I've strived to do with my company. It's not just, I'm not waiting for a pandemic to happen. I want to make sure that you're okay through the seemingly okay times, so that way you have a good foundation when things like this hit. And it's not just something that's added onto an already full bottle of trauma that you're trying to hold on to. So we have to continue these conversations, and I hope that you are actually setting the precedent for more of these conversations to happen in person, online, however it may happen, so that more people have access to this. This can't just be a conversation that we have when trauma hits, when someone gets murdered or kidnappings happen. It just can't be during these times. If we could do this weekly, in all honesty, that would be great. Haitians have suffered a trauma. I know it's a lot, as I say weekly, but Haitians have suffered too much trauma not to have that outlet. And we are so big on our pride and so big on our resiliency that we don't know how to say, I'm not okay. And that's not good, because that's when you really suffer the most. When you can't even acknowledge how much you're hurting and you're holding on to that, and more trauma keeps happening, and another earthquake hits, and another kidnapping hits, and an assassination hits, and then a global pandemic hits. When do you think you're going to heal if you're never acknowledging any of these? So hopefully this conversation opens up. I'm hoping more Haitians are removing stigma when it comes to mental health in terms of speaking to a therapist. I know we're very big on our religion. I'm very big on my faith as well, but my main thing is you can go to God and therapy. You don't pray to God for a job, but then you don't put applications out or go on to interviews. So when you're praying God for healing, you got to be willing to also use the resources that he's giving you, and prayer is only one of them. Are you seeking out mental health professions? Are you coming to events like this that allow you to voice your frustrations, as some of the people in the comments are doing? And that's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's interesting to hear how different medical professionals have described what trauma, feels like, because yes, a lot of us don't even know that we're not okay, right? For a lot of our people, mental health or having a mental health issue means you're being institutionalized somewhere. You have to be medicated. Can you dig a little
I want to add, sorry, may I just, I apologize for I just want to add for how the trauma can affect the physical. So oftentimes, especially in our community, the trauma or the anxiety, and many times doesn't exhibit itself through what you kind of described as traditional mental health. So it could be oftentimes it's physical symptoms, stomach, as I said, Wednesday that day, because we had a community event. So the things that I was hearing from people, my stomach, is hurting. And, so a lot of it was physical, whether it's stomach, gastrointestinal, headache, fatigue. There are, most of the time is going to be those physical things that are contributing to the mental health. And to the last part with the stigma and discrimination, half of it is us as people to recognize when, as Naomi was saying, it's okay not to be okay, and when we need to seek care and help. And the other half is also lies in the professionals, the healthcare professionals, to have culturally informed, trauma-informed care, to be able to avoid the stigma or the biases, to be that bridge to the community. Because if a community feels like, or a person, that this person or organization is not going to understand me, my feelings, my culture, the way trauma, then that is going to continue the cycle and the circle. So there's two aspects in which we have to come together to make sure this community is taken care of. And my last part about the racism, the stigma, it's all of our responsibility here whenever we hear any of the stigma and discrimination to educate and inform, because there's a community who do not have as much of a voice and may not speak up or say anything, so that we can start to knock down some of the stigma affecting our community.
Yeah, those are good takeaways for everyone. On the one hand, what I'm hearing is, understand that it's okay to not be okay and seek help. You can go to God, but also go to therapy. I think that's great. But on the flip side, from a provider standpoint, our community does need more providers who are culturally fluent, who can be able to understand like what we're going through our culture and provide support in that sense. Is that right?
I'm sorry. I'd also like to add, I do agree with Dr. Pardo. In fact, that mental health issues do stem to show out in the physical,
Mhm.
and Haitians are very good at accepting the physical. Ou get tension, fait sick, that's fine. But if I tell you you're depressed and you possibly have bipolar, then that's an issue. So they more so want to gravitate towards the physical issues as something medical that they can take a pill for. But I'm also hoping that our providers who are culturally competent and do know about mental health will also lead them back to a mental health provider saying, well, this is what it's coming out as, but this may be what it is, and actually redirect them to a mental health professional that they can speak to. So it's up to us too as professionals to kind of redirect the people who don't know. Because my generation, yes, we're more aware of mental health, but the generation before me is not. It's always been stigmatized before me. Like, we all have somebody in the family that you don't really speak about, or he's in the corner and it's a mental health issue, but nobody was speaking about it. So if we're more aware, then we need to do better for the next.
Mhm. Elsie, can you weigh in a little bit from a community service, standpoint, what some of the resources or advocacy campaigns maybe like to get more resources for our community's mental health or general well-being?
Well, the good thing is, it's not like we're starting from ground zero. There are a number of community-based organizations in our community that do provide some kind of mental support outside of the churches, whatever denomination they are. But you have like Diaspora, you have HCC, there's a number, Life of Hope, that organizations with doors. You have for the youth, you have there are organizations in the community. You have organization that serve young people. You have Hope in Brooklyn and Queens. So there are a number of organizations that already are there available for the community to be able to guide them and provide them support. And additionally, we are fortunate enough to have a number of Haitian providers. You have the Association of Psychiatrists. There's a number of things. It's a matter of how do we have a conversation to understand that how do we pull those resources together in a central location, giving access, because our community is dealing with the more educated folks perfectly understand what Tommy just said. You need to pray. You also need to take care of your mental health. But a lot of us cannot afford those type of services. So it matters that people understand. And, believe it or not, this assassination is traumatic for all Haitians, true. But it's even more traumatic for the Haitian who's only here on a visitor's visa, or who's only here, because there's a lot of other social issues that is surrounding this issue that are bringing is putting our mental capacity to this brink. So I just want to make sure that people understand. I do agree, seek mental health, speak about it, and let's continue to have this very important conversation on the regularly, but more importantly, to really reassure people on my behalf as the executive director of Hope, but also on my colleagues who run other centers, that these community centers are there for you to be, because there's a fear of language, there's a fear of immigration status, and there's also this shame. I'm from the diaspora. I really don't really have the right to say this is hurting me because this has nothing to do with me. This is a national issue. It includes all of us. So there are resources. So what I want people to do is to be able to understand that these community centers are not there just to fill your citizenship application. There are other services. Learn to know, and there's been an aggressive outreach done from all our parts to make sure the community knows that we are the safe zone. But I guess we could, in these times, when my colleagues and I really do have a responsibility to step up that effort and really call on people to come in and help us, but they are support. So we're not starting from scratch, which is the good news. But now, how do we bring all our resources together and ensure that we are actually going out to reach to people who will not come to us because they may need us the most, is a different conversation that I think we all will I'm hoping we all will leave here committed to reach out to our counterparts and find out how to best do that and make those resources available to you at the Haitians, to each other, so we can make sure our community is well. And I think one of the things we are not strong at is common wealth, common health. We know that we tend to be very, as a lot of people, I'm good, the rest of the world should be good. And I think this is the time, like, raise a national consciousness to make sure that we are our brothers' keepers, we are our sisters' keepers, to make sure that we are healing, not just individually, but that our community is healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, certainly we'll take those resources and put them on the list and send it out to everybody, or put it on our website, HaitianTimes.com, or on our socials when they become available, because we do want to make sure that folks have the resources to just teach themselves and move forward from this, or try to, right? Before, Elsie, you mentioned some of the socioeconomic impact that is surrounding this entire aftermath of the assassination, right? One example you gave is people who are stuck here or here on a visitor's visa and are trying to figure out like what to do. How do you go back to Haiti? We've also heard about, many Haitians who had plans to visit friends and family for the summer in Haiti, people they hadn't been able to see since at least 2018, really, like you said, because it wasn't Pays Luck, it was COVID, and now this, right? So all of these are playing into how folks are just trying to get, think through this time and what to do, right? Is there anything you'd like to add to that? And then we'll go to Gary and Bishop Sansarik for some other comments.
One of the last thing that I wanted to say, at this pivotal moment, we have this TPS thing hanging over everybody's head, and federal registry is not there. And I know many people, with us Haitians, it's always, we are natural nurturers. We worry about our well-being, and we also worry how we're going to take care of the people we've left behind. So one of the things that I'd like to put out there as a resource is that people can start, protect yourself, speak to your community center, come in, apply for your status, to change your status. And we've been offering the services for free to people who want to come in and apply for TPS. If you were here as of May 21st, even though the federal register, start getting your thing in order so you are ready to go, so you are protected here as well. Because if there's an opportunity for you to be protected, that matters. You cannot take care of others when you're not taken care of. So people are worried about that. And there are other sources. There are people, believe it or not, as much as the diaspora takes care of Haiti, there are some people in Haiti who are taking care of people who live in the diaspora. So we also want to make sure that we are making people a little more secure. You can give them all the mental health advice or the prayers that you want, but you also want to make sure we are addressing food insecurity, housing insecurities, other things that make us crazy, that makes us, anxious. So I want to make sure that, again, I can't stress that enough. There are services, and we need to go beyond that Haitian pride that we're so good and we're so big on, and really be able to call and have that conversation. Says, I'm in trouble. I can't, I have food issues, because those things are available, and our community continue to suffer because they're not accessing it, because we can't, your confidentiality when you speak to a social service agency is honored. So reach out to us.
I just want to add, one thing onto that from the health snippet to add on to what Elsie said. We know that most of the things that cause the worst illness and everything happens outside of the healthcare. It's on all the things that Elsie just mentioned, the food insecurity, the housing insecurity. And one thing that has happened over the past year, there's been increased funding and support for all those kind of things. A lot of food box distribution, which, here we do food box distribution weekly, housing support, all those kind of things. So those resources exist. And organizations like the ones Elsie just listed, I was here, we're here to be that bridge. So they exist and they're there, and we want to make sure that everybody, those are the things that are driving the health conditions that we're seeing, the things outside of healthcare that we need to provide the support for.
Yeah. So let's switch gears for a little bit and go into, action, right? Because Haïtien, c'est l'homme d'action, c'est femme d'action, right? That's part of the healing process for many of us. I know Bishop Sansarik mentioned that this should really be a prise de conscience, a wake-up call for Haitians, right? And Gary, you said you want to marshal your resources, across your entire network to make sure this doesn't become another crisis that gets swept under the rug. So what are some immediate ways do you think we in the diaspora can move forward and take action to make sure that, this doesn't happen again or just becomes another footnote in Haiti's history?
Before I answer that question, Makovi, I'd like to address another trauma that we face that we're not mentioning, Black Lives Matter movement. That was traumatic for me, particularly since my son kind of took after me a little bit in his radicalism. He was out there on the front line, facing down the police, and he had been arrested the year before during protests. And so I was really worried about him. And so that really was another trauma that we faced that we haven't discussed. But as far as what can be done, from a journalistic point of view, as you know, we have been talking to several news organizations to partner with them to bring an investigative team together to get to the bottom of the story. They have experts who can trace money transactions, intelligence transactions, all kinds of ways to find information that will piece this thing together. So the public is, to the best of our knowledge, will know what happened, and we're going to connect, we're going to follow the money. Because as I've been saying, this was a hit. This was a personal hit, and it's about money, it's about energy, it's about oil. Those are the root of problems in the world. And so that's what we're looking at. In terms of what people can do, I think, when we are derelict in our civic participation, we suffer. For instance, whether the diaspora knows it or not, we can vote. Whenever this election will be held, let's make sure we come out and vote in droves.
You mean vote in the Haiti elections?
Yes, because that's important, because what you're seeing right now, it's an erosion, a complete breakdown of democracy, right, in Haiti, such as it ever was. So when you see Moise getting elected with 16% of the vote, 16 people voting and then he got 600,000 votes out of millions of registered voters. That's a dereliction of civic duty, because when you do that, you have no voice, because Moise knows that he doesn't have a mandate, but he doesn't have any to be held accountable to anyone. So things fall apart. When we look at the situation, we have to look in the mirror and say, okay, what did I do to prevent this? And so I think that's one thing that's easy for Haitian Americans, the country's de facto middle class, to play its role. There were, I don't know where, measures being taken so that we can vote. I already have my voting cards. I was in Haiti in January. I registered. Unfortunately, it's still down in Haiti because I left thinking that I could have someone pick it up for me. They told me, no, I am the one who has to pick it up. And so I don't know when I'm going to be in Haiti next, but I guarantee you once I know the date of the election, I'm going to go to Haiti, get my card, come back here and vote. This is basic fundamental civic participation. we don't need to do anything else if that. Now, I'm sure there are other things that could be done, but we need to reclaim our power, our right as Haitians, which that we are, no matter what, wherever I go in the world, okay? I'm Haitian. I let people know that, because Pierre-Pierre cannot be anything else but Haitian.
That was a lot to take in. So for those who missed it, Gary was saying from a journalistic standpoint, which is his field, right? He's looking to marshal the resources of the Haitian Times to try to get down to the bottom of this murder. And then for the rest of the diaspora, no matter what profession you're in or what space you occupy, try to make sure that you get your Haitian voting card so you can vote in upcoming Haiti elections, constitutional referendums, whatever they may be, because we now have the mechanism through the local consulate offices, the general consulates in New York, in DC, in Miami, and other parts to actually go cast a ballot in the Haiti elections. At least that's what we've been hearing and heard was going to start happening with this round of elections. So keep that in mind and look into it as a key takeaway from tonight. I think, Christina, you're trying to say something, but you may be on mute. I'm not sure. Before I go to Bishop Sansarik.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. All right, Bishop Sansarik, let's hear from you. You said you really want this to be a wake-up call for
Yes.
stations. Yeah, can you dig a little bit more into that, please?
Yes, in this panel, I think they are very intelligent people. You have said so many good things and interesting things, and I agree with all your analysis, except that when you write a book, you have to have different chapters, and we are talking about everything at the same time. Sometimes we focus on the Haitians here, and sometimes on the Haitians in Haiti. So we should kind of divide our discourse so that we can be more focused and we can come out with resolutions. I think the community here, you mentioned that we suffer from prejudice, from discrimination. We have to, it's a fact, there is discrimination, but we conquer discrimination through performance, through wisdom. And very brilliant Haitians have been recognized in many circles. And you have somebody like Pierre-Pierre in Canada who has received many medals from the Canadian community and who is doing a great job in Haiti. He has even created a university. So, all right, there is prejudice, but we will conquer it gradually through our performance, the quality of our education, of our wisdom, of our faith also, because faith is a great power. Because Jesus said that we speak louder with what we do than with what we say. It's always easy to say, but do you perform? Do you do it? So we need to perform. But I think we must focus more on Haiti. The situation of Haiti is really dramatic because you have more than half of the population is less than 30 years old, and 80% of them are unemployed. So there is a problem of hunger, a problem of misery, no opportunity, and that leads to anger and to violence, and sometimes the loss of wisdom, of reflections. Of course, out of the crowd, there are always some people who think, but the majority becomes angry. And they want to burn houses, to kill people. Okay. This is not how you build a country. It's through union. Okay. Union is not possible at once because there are too many differences between the different levels of the population. So it's a long road that we have to walk. And I think you have been asking where are the first steps. Even the first steps I have discussed with very intelligent people that say, well, it's an election. But before we come to a valid election, of course, the election is key, but can we have a good election when the people in charge are not honest? How to have honest people in charge? Education, okay, formation, family, everything. The first thing is whoever has a temporary leadership of the country must be able to stop this kidnapping, these gangs, so many gangs that poison the life, not simply of rich people, but also of poor people. Everybody is frightened. Now, if we say that we need to invest, how can one go and invest money when the next morning he may be murdered and his money will be stolen? You know, so you really, there are many, many things to do. Definitely, I'm certain that many people who go to Haiti, even foreigners, they fall in love with the Haitian people. The basic Haitian people are natural, are good people like everybody else, you know. But the leadership is corrupt. There is a say in leadership. Mr. Gary was saying that they are to vote, yes. So, you know, the first step, how can we have a decent, temporary, transitory government? It's a headache, but that's what we need, to form one who can. Because I think many foreign nations are ready to help, but except that in the past, sometimes these helpers, the so-called friends of Haiti, are looking for their own interest sometimes more than the interest of the people. But there is oil in Haiti. There is oil. And why did Clinton purchase so much land in Haiti? Huh? What is he doing with that land? Oh, we need to cultivate the land to produce food so that there will be at least food for the people, even simple food, patates, zabuka, mango, okay? And there are serious crises, you know, rain, waters. I grew up in Jeremy, and I remember how do you call it again? The river there, it was a large river. Estimé built a bridge over it. I went and I was amazed to see that La Grande-Anse, which was a large river, now is like a rigole, just like, you know, losing its water. These are very, very, so governments have to deal with that, okay? Of course, rain, okay, hurricanes, okay? So we have huge problems in our hands. However, if we are together, and the diaspora is sending $3 or $4 billion a year to support Haiti, but that money is used immediately for food, okay, schooling, okay, not much for investment. You cannot invest in Haiti because you're going to be stolen. All right. So I'm talking too much. So a wake-up call. We have to really think very, very deeply and kind of make a road, step number one, step number two, step number three. Step number one, you have to stop this violence. The gangs must not be in control of our future. Then education. You know, so many Haitians still are illiterate. How many? School, you know, your roads, you have electricity, but food in the first place, peace. So we have a lot of work to do. Our work has not yet ended. And the diaspora, I think, will have a part to play when it will have free access. Now, I think most people are afraid to go to Haiti. They would like to go and visit their parents, but if they drive by Martissan, their cars will be stopped and they will be threatened in their lives, you know. So we have a lot of work to do. God bless us. I'm sure we can wake up and we can conquer the misery through l'union fait la force. This corresponds with the gospel, because Jesus said, "You who love the poor loves me." The way to show your love for God is through your respect and love for the poor. So I hope we work to really lift up this country for its present situation of distress.
Mhm. That's well said, Bishop Sansarik. There's a lot that you said there, but I think for me, the key takeaways were for everyone to realize that there's no easy, quick answer to solving Haiti's problems or how we can contribute to the solution.
Gradually, that we will find
Yes.
the answers.
Yes, we have to advocate for the cessation of the violence that we're seeing. We have to stop these gangs and the proliferation of these arms all throughout Haiti. We have to educate our populace and through that, hopefully get to the honest leadership that we're saying is necessary to really move the country forward. But in the meantime, right, we have to keep showing up. We have to perform, as he said, as Bishop Society said, we have to continue performing and relying on the wisdom and the pride and the unity that Haitians have to move forward. So that's a very, I think, broad yet tactical enough advice for us here tonight to just have some sense of how we can continue to move forward while processing this trauma. Before we wrap, we do have some questions in the chat that came in, so I'll go through them really quickly. Like one person is very intrigued to know how to address the issue of folie chef, right? Tout haïtien besoin président. Tout haïtien besoin faire un coup, right? Un coup président ou bien un coup sénateur. How can we make sure that we have viable institutions versus personalities that want to occupy a particular office? Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
I'll speak from the community standpoint before the experts give the expert advice.
Can't hear you.
So I have to follow that act. What I do want to say is, I think one of the things that should really, a place to start is teaching Haitians the value that they are, what we say, il n'y a pas de sous-métier. We cannot build a nation because everybody's a doctor. We cannot build a nation of doctors, a nation of engineers, and a nation of presidents. That's just not the way it works. I do think there has to be some work, some in the rural communities, some work done broadly throughout the community that needs to have teaching people that if we're going to rebuild Haiti, we're going to need skills, and doctors are not going to do it. We're going to need to strengthen our base. We need masons. We need to value and teach people those senior moment.
Cultivate the land.
Those skills to be able to do that, go back to the land. And you need everyone to bring Haiti to it. Value and honor teachers, raise competent teachers. We need the bus drivers, we need the garbage collectors, we need the people who work the land, we need the masons, we need you need the electricians. We need to go back to that. And I know when we speak of Haiti, we hail all the professionals, we hail everybody with the degrees, and we fail to see that until you are going back and making sure they are training their skills where every citizen can feel valued and can feel that they have a hand in the rebuilding, and their hand is as important to the land as the doctor and the president is. Until we do that and model the kind of teaching communities to take care of themselves, that the president is not going to feed everybody, that we need, until we have a stake in it, we're always going to have an issue, because I feel like that's everywhere. We need to make sure everyone is valued, and that's one big issue in Haiti.
Mm-hmm. So how do we make sure that people feel valued? What are some practical tips or steps?
Make trade schools as important as you make universities. A child who gets into a trade school should be hailed and congratulated as much as a child who makes it to medical school. Training our children that for Haitians to finally allow their children to pick what they want to do, how they want to contribute to society. There's a bunch of unhappy doctors and engineers and lawyers going around. So whereas when you allow a child to pick something and teach your children that I want you to be a happy adult, a contributing adult, a responsible adult, you get one heck of an adult in your hand. because the child feels supported and you guide them to what they want to do. Like Gary was saying, my child is in the front line in the Black Lives Matter. There are not many parents who are going to say anything about the children unless they have a big time. And this child could very well hold a degree. It doesn't matter. It's what is the child doing that is making the child sane, happy, whole, and contributing factor to this community. And that's something we need to do both here and in Haiti, and teach every child that whatever they dream is valued. If we bring all the skills together, we are definitely going to see a different face of our nation.
Yeah, I want to add the same, as we are in a space where everything is about equity and the people, and that's what I think Elsie was saying, that we need to look at that equity, people, community first. Justice and change, I believe, starts in the community, and unless we value all people, unless we can accept that there may be hierarchies that are barriers for certain people, unless we value ourselves and our community and all the people within a community, we're going to see the same. So when Gary mentioned the numbers of people that voted, as we say here, voters, certain things are not by accident. So we have to make sure that we value people, and we start with the community and the people's voice to be able to move forward. And that was part of, I think, what started with the founding of Haiti and the revolution. And we have to make sure that we go back to that. And same with the other places, starting with that here. That's the same struggle that we're dealing with here. It just looks different here in Brooklyn. It looks different in the United States, but it's the same barriers that are demonstrating itself hate in Haiti and here in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're absolutely right, Christina, about the way that racism and systemic inequality is playing out in Haiti, on our country as a whole, versus one community within a larger group. We do have resources for that if you're interested in learning more, that we can also send when we push out the mental health resources as well. We do have another question.
Matt, can I say something before we move on?
Sure, go ahead.
To answer about the question, Patrick Sylvain's question about, all fully chef.
Yes.
Yeah. So when my children were in grade school, and I'm sure you experienced this, the school invites you to watch them interact. One of the things that caught my attention, and I shared with my wife because she's not Haitian, so she doesn't know how school in Haiti is run, is that, first of all, they put them in a circle, okay? And they have a little exercise that all of them have to participate. Otherwise, you cannot complete the task. Mm-hmm. So the question of togetherness, knowing that each one of us has a role, is ingrained into American children in childhood, from childhood. Like, okay, you can't do this alone. And you need everybody. And so if you know that you need everybody, you start valuing everybody. Now, I'm not a Pollyannish who think that, there are not prejudice and there's a hierarchy. But even within that, you know that you need that person. Otherwise, you can't function. So that's what I wanted to share with the audience about, to me, what I think is a fundamental challenge that we have in Haiti, where, taking leadership position is not encouraged. So, you don't understand your role in the society. Mm-hmm. You accept whatever lot they put you, whatever, station of the cross that you put in, and that's just the way it is.
Your lot in life. Yep.
Sorry, can I add to that?
Sure, Sohami, go right ahead.
I think I do agree with what everybody's put forth in terms of Haitian chef, which is in everything from church to government. So it is what it is. It's just ingrained in us. But in terms of how Haiti is, you have to realize, like, who in the Haitian culture really gets fed. It's always the hierarchy, the top. So c'est chef. So I could understand why a lot of younger people or those who are poor, that's all they see and that's all they know, or that's all that they want to be, because you're not fulfilling their basic needs. There's no food, there's no water, there's no safety, but the chef, he has all of that. So of course, that's who I'm aspiring to be, because I know that I can not only take care of me, but my family or the people who I care for around me. So it's not even just that, oh, we want to be leader, but it's also that sense of, you know, provision that that leader has that we also need to be worried about in terms of providing for the people. So it's great that we should have trade school, and we should definitely encourage, because we do need every single part of it. But we also need to make sure before even that is thought of, that the basic hierarchy of needs are provided for the people.
Mm-hmm. Yep, certainly true. We have, someone had asked how to go ahead and register to vote in Haiti elections. I am putting into the chat for everyone our story from the Haitian Times about how the diaspora can vote abroad, from abroad without having to travel to Haiti. Basically, you have to go into your general consulate, your local consulate, and register for a national identification card. You just have to have one Haitian parent, I believe, or proof that you were born in Haiti and whatnot, and you can register for your card. When the elections take place, then you could go back to the consulate and cast your ballot there. So it's one of our stories from earlier this year. You can read up on it. I do see someone in the chat said we should all go to these consulates and make sure that the equipment is there and in working order.
May I say something?
We'll be there, and we will be checking for sure. Go ahead, Elsie.
Yeah, when we put things out, I know when this whole thing came out about you can vote, and you brought on that, and Gary says he's gonna vote. I just wanted to, before the person put it in there, when Haiti or we say these things to the community, we have to also make sure that we are holding them accountable, because this is right now, these times are too important for our consulates to be lax. If we're going to tell a Haitian person, sometimes it matters so much to the person who may not have a car to get up and says, I'm going to do this because it matters. We need to make sure that this consulate are equipped to receive people in a manner that is respectful and respectable. If you say, I can come and fill the card, I can come, this is what I come to do. I mean, if our consulates in the abroad are any reflection of what Haiti is, we're in a lot of trouble. So as journalists, I think you guys are in a better position to hold them accountable. The Haitian Time is good for that. So it may be a good idea to say, we are promoting for people to do this because it matters. You guys need to be ready. Because I know I, for one, will not step into a Haitian consulate's office for anything if I can, because the receipts, the way they receive you, they're just not there. They're just not there. I'm not saying physically not there, altogether not there. So if we're going to tell our community to be part of something, we need to be ready to receive them in kind.
Yep, message well received. And I believe we have some folks who represent the government in the chat that I'm seeing, who can take that message to heart as well and make sure it's passed on to our ambassador and the general consulates across the country. So thank you for that, Elsie, for amplifying that point about making sure the whole process is up and running and that we can actually do it without wasting our time. We have another question, and then we'll be moving to wrap up, because we're about 15 minutes past. But it's like Miki Racine from Facebook wanted to know, how can Haiti advance if the business class refuses to share the riches of the country with the masses? And I think that goes into what we've said earlier about how the inequality, the systemic racism, the imperialist, neocolonialist policies that have brought Haiti to this point are what we've seen at play. And that's what continues to perpetrate the type of government we've seen, or lack of governance rather, the constant hunger and crises that Haiti is in. Does anyone want to tackle that one, that particular question about how we can actually get folks to share the wealth or even build more wealth so it's not a zero-sum game? Haiti? I added that last part. Gary, you've talked about this, I say, or railed about this a little bit. So we can start with you, or we could go to Dr. Pardo, I think you were about to say something.
No, well, that's my column for tomorrow. Stay tuned.
Oh, great. So, Gary does have a weekly column that comes out every Friday in the Haitian Times, haitiantimes.com. So be sure to catch it. Just log on to the site. And if you're not a member or subscriber, please go ahead and support us and do that so you can read his thoughts on everything happening in Haiti in real time each week. Anyone else want to add anything to this before we start wrapping up and get your final thoughts?
I just want to say, until we have a country that is safe, yes, that's a problem. But until we have a country that is stable, institutions that are sound, investments are going to suffer. It's a domino effect. So I think when there's security in a country, there's safety and people's rights are respected, I think people are naturally going to go back and start. A lot of Haitians want to invest. I, for one, who grew up here, never made plans to retire here. I made plans to retire in Haiti, and I refuse to give up that plan because I have vision of a better country, of a better Haiti. And I think if we all committed, I mean, once, these things are in order and in place, we are going to be able to build and make sure that we are sharing the health, teaching people, again, to be healthy and wealthy in all kinds of industries, as it is modeled here. You know what I mean? So it's not just going to be a privileged few who are going to be able to share the good life of the country, understanding that the country's good living is for all Haitians on the ground.
And
so this reminds me, go ahead, Christina.
It really goes back to the same thing, to the root. If the structures and the systems enable the inequity and the small billionaire, millionaire class, it's going to continue. We need to empower people and communities so that they can help to change the structures and systems. And for somebody who has worked in Haiti over amount of time, I have seen the difference. And, there was part of that was quite optimistic. I said this week has been a little bit of in that, but I saw the change and difference with the younger leaders and collaborators that were more open to collaboration, more open to innovation and difference in the way that things are done. So empowering people, communities, and the youth, because there's a generation of leaders who did not want things to change or pass things on. And I felt it at working in Haiti, the difference, the generational difference. And that really is the only key to, I think, a difference in the future. Without that, the structures and systems will continue to enable the people and the money with the power, because they've done so for centuries.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you're saying we need to help Haiti dismantle the systems that it's been working with or trying to work from, that were built from 1804 and the early 20th century.
The systems that enable the current hierarchy that is there, and empower the community and the new leaders that are more open to changing the way things that have been done historically. And I think without that, we're gonna continue to see the same cycle continue over and over again.
Yeah. So Elsie, something you said about your dream, right, to retire in Haiti that you won't give up on. This brings up a couple questions around the diaspora and our role that I'd like to end on, because from what we've seen this week, right? 3 of the 30 suspects, I'm losing count at this point, of the suspects arrested were or are Haitian American, right? Ostensibly, you have the mastermind, Dr. Sanon, who helped to put this together, right, is the current narrative that we're hearing out of the Haitian investigators. This doctor contracted with the security company that then got the Colombians involved so they could go and perpetrate this act, right? 2 other Haitian Americans were there to translate, so-called. And so what we've seen in our reporting at the Haitian Times over the past few days are people who are saying that they feel a level of shame if indeed people in the diaspora either planned or facilitated this heinous crime that took place, against the president and just against our country. So I wanted you guys, ladies, to maybe address some of that, right? It goes back to the earlier question around stigma and discrimination and just how we can move through this immediate phase of processing the news. And so if you could speak directly to the shame that people may be feeling and how they could move past that as diaspora, we can maybe give people some guidance coming out of this particular webinar.
Who do you want to go first?
Either one. Go ahead, Sansarik.
I'll start. So one, I would explain or encourage anyone who's feeling any type of shame to accept your feelings. Your emotions are what they are. Don't let anyone take it from you. Don't let anyone tell you you're not supposed to feel shame, because in all honesty, this is a blow to the Haitian community. We've gone through way too much from the first freed Black nation to be leading up to this in 2021. So if you feel ashamed, that's fine. But I will say that you should not stay there. In all honesty, my pride does not change for Haiti. Even being born here, if somebody calls me American, I'm very offended. I still tell them, no, I'm Haitian, because that's what I grew up as. That's my culture. That's my identity. So don't stay here. I mean, in all honesty, you can't even take pride away from certain Americans after the 4-year presidency that we went through. So don't take this one blow for something to remove the pride that you've had for so long, growing up in what is still a beautiful culture, still a beautiful country. As you said, Bill Clinton bought so much land out in Haiti. Why would someone invest in a dying country? It's because it's not dying. But the way propaganda is, the way our government unfortunately has been, and poor leadership leads us to see a different narrative. And we need to be able to go back to the roots, go back to the history, and remember that we are still a prideful nation and there's a reason for it. So feel your shame, yes, but don't hold on to that. Continue to have pride in your country. Continue to have pride in this culture, because we are still a great and beautiful culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd like to say, I hope that this can be seen as a time for everybody to come together, as Bishop Sansarik said, Union fait la force, a time for solidarity and a rallying cry of what we can do, the vision that we all have for Haiti. And one of the things I always think about when it's brought up about shame or anything like that, I think about the HIV AIDS epidemic, right? That when it started, Haiti was unscientifically grouped as a risk factor, and the response from the Haitian community to that. We should always, look back at what, if they question what's possible, what we can do, we should look back at that, because Haitians here, Haitians in Haiti came together and said, no, we are not going to accept that. And they fought against it. They advocated against it. They came together as a community. They served the community. They advocated. They marched here in Brooklyn. And not just that, they put the action to it. They did study. The Haitian diaspora was involved, right, in starting institutes within Haiti, Haitian health professionals to do research, to do scientific research, to prove what they are saying unscientifically is not true. And not only that, but lead the way in how we can treat and address HIV in countries and communities like Haiti, to the point where certain things that were done in Haiti, like the use of community health workers, that has been duplicated all over the world. All right. So for me, I see that was one of the prime examples of stigma of the Haitian community, and the Haitian community all over the world came together, not just advocated, fought against it, prove against it, and change the tide in that. And so if we were able to do that amongst everything else that we were able to do, I'm sure all of us fully believe that there is nothing that we cannot do. If there's a unifying force for us to come together, not focus on the divisions, what is bringing us together to move forward. And so that's the impart that I'd like to give to people, that we have shown over and over how we can not only survive and thrive in many aspects, and hopefully now this is an opportunity for us to come together to realize the vision that we all know, Haiti is. It's not too long ago that Haiti was on the top 10 places that you need to visit. There was a time where we were seeing a little bit of a change, and people were contacting me. They're going to Haiti, family members who were born here, who've never been to Haiti, they want to travel, and so that was great to see. And we need to come together with the right principles to be able to see that forward.
L'union fait la force.
That's right. Great. So I'm going to move ahead and just wrap up, just share the key takeaways, at least for me, from this conversation. And then you all can share your final thoughts with our audience that's on with us on Zoom and Facebook Live. And for those who will be watching in the days to come. I think initially, one of the things that you said that struck me early on, Bishop Sansarik, was that this is or should be a wake-up call for Haitians everywhere, all across the diaspora. This is not normal. This is not okay. And so us just keep that in mind and let that be the inspiration, right? Dr. Prado mentioned we need a rallying cry, right? Let's just figure out what that rallying cry could be, coming from that standpoint of us needing to wake up wherever we are. You think trying to figure out the fear of what will happen next in Haiti or for Haiti, that's what's driving a lot of the ideas and actions that we're all wanting to take. I think one of them is, as Gary said so passionately, we have to vote and all of us get our Haitian national identification cards, right? At least have it and then decide if you're going to use it or not. And then we can follow up with the consulates and make sure that their machines are actually working, right? That the times they say people can come in and vote are actually honored. So that accountability factor is huge. And to, again, Bishop Sansarik's point about how to actually move forward in the long term, it is a long, winding road. It's not going to be easy for any of us to get there. But if we continue to make sure that we provide, we stop the violence, we provide education, and we educate people to understand what it means to have real, honest leadership, then we might be able to get to the point where we can have our family and friends have vacations and retirement homes in Haiti again, like we like to do in so many other places. And in the meantime, right, Sohami made the point of being sure to feel your feelings, right? And to know that it's okay not to be okay. At the same time, you may be praying to God and you're feeling things manifesting physically, the stress, just the trauma, just overthinking things. It's okay to feel those things and know that you have resources that are available to help you get through it. Not only your faith leader like Bishop Sansarik and so many others, your priest, your pastor, your voodoo ceremonies, whatever you might turn to, right? Use those and also seek the help of professional counselors to help you get through this. So that's the key takeaway for all of us. Yes, Elsie?
I wanted to add something back to the point about, I think it matters. I wanted to leave these words that it's important that we channel that energy and that shame and whatever into tangible actions. I think it's not the time for Haitians to give up their dreams. I think it's not the time for Haitians to give up on Haiti. You may not be able to do it. When you're buying a house, you're not ready, you start saving. And I think it's the same way. Let's do small little steps, small conversations, and really invest. If you were already paying school for a child in Haiti, this is not the time to give up on that kid. If you're already helping a family build a small business in Haiti, this is not the time to give up on that. So I think right now, whatever that shame, what we are feeling, whatever the frustration, we need to put it into tangible action. Voting, yes, but supporting people on the ground, supporting your own family, and making a plan to Haiti. I may not be able to visit Haiti with my family this year, but what can I do to build a better country where I can bring my country, where I can bring my children and my husband who's not Haitian or my wife who's not Haitian? I think it matters that we don't let this determine who we are. This is just a thing. It's an important thing. It's a big thing, but it's a thing. But 200 plus of history should not be allowed to be destroyed by this one heinous act. And I think we have as a community to be able to pull each other down from this place to move us into tangible actions that are going to help us build our community and our country.
That's excellent. And I'll take that as your final thoughts, Elsie. Then I'll go to Gary, Dr. Pardo, Bishop Sansarik, and then Sohami to wrap us up. Just a minute or two of your final thoughts or words for the community moving forward past through this assassination.
Well, I have two final thoughts, but I'll keep them very short. I remember years ago, I was in Dominica attending the Creole Festival. They have their great festival.
Great.
And I was staying at the Airbnb, and the owner told me, he said something that reminded me of this conversation. He said, there's nothing like being a Black man in the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And really, Elsie's point, I'm at the same crossroads right now. Okay, we're looking for places to chill, and Haiti is not appealing right now, and it's really hard. But anyway, the second point is really really not so subtle ask. We need your support. The Haitian Times needs your support to help us with reporting, even before this crisis, because we have been really informing you, we hope, on things that are germane and important to you, and we need your help. If you don't have any money, I understand. You can follow us on social media. There are other ways you can interact with us, engage with us, send us story ideas. Let us know what you're up to. All of them may not be stories or anything, but at least we have a dialogue going. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Dr. Pardo, any final thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much. Again, thank you for holding this panel, and thank you for everybody who is tuning in. From my healthcare professional standpoint, to make sure that we take care of ourselves this past year with COVID and the pandemic and the anxiety from that, and this on top of it, as you mentioned, all of the mental health and anxiety can affect our physical health, not just us, the signs like the stomach and all those things, but our high blood pressure, our diabetes, and everything like that. And public health message: if you haven't gotten vaccinated, consider COVID-19 vaccine. It's safe, it's effective, and so that we can move past that part of our anxiety. And from the community perspective, we have to, same thing what Gary's saying, empower and invest in our communities here and abroad. When anything happens in Haiti, it affects our community here. There's significant portions of our community that do not have a voice, that are not engaged in this, and we need to make sure that we care and provide them with the access to vote or for anything else. Support us in the community. Like I said, I'm here at Life of Hope, one of the centers that have a focus and a vision for the community here and in Haiti as well. And take care of self. With that, if we don't take care of ourselves, there's nothing we can do for others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great reminder there. Bishop Sansarik, would you like to share any final thoughts for the folks who are with us?
Very good. And coller les épaules. Let's report one another. Mm-hmm. It was a pleasure listening to one another. Let's learn from one another. Let's work together. Let's not compete with each other. Mm-hmm. Let's work together. L'union fait la force.
It's a great reminder and message. So Hami, over to you to just wrap up for this evening.
Sure. Again, thank you so much for not only holding this discussion, but inviting me to speak on it. My final thoughts will always be that of mental health. Elsie mentioned something yesterday during our preliminary meeting was Haitians are big on mid-fomsu, mid-negsu. In America, it's usually just man up, but we take it a step further. I want us to remember that being resilient doesn't mean you can't ask for help. Sometimes it takes more strength to show that weakness and ask for help than holding it in and bottling it up and I guess making the appearance that you're okay. So just to remember that, like, being not okay is okay, and seek the help that you need to make sure that your mental health is okay. Because once that's okay, then you can start to really tackle the other things going on in your life.
That's excellent. Thank you all so much. Sohami, Christina, Bishop Sansarik, Elsie, Gary, of course. Thank you for answering the call as sudden as it was over the past few days for us to hold this forum while the community was really in need of it. And we can tell from the interaction here on Zoom and on Facebook that it's much needed. And we will endeavor to continue having them as frequently as possible. And just stick with us. You know, like everyone said, follow us on social media, HaitianTimes.com, because our mission is to keep you informed and to give you the information that we need from our perspective to do what we need to do for our communities here in the diaspora, in the US, and also in Haiti. So with that said, we'll look forward to inviting you again to another one of these sessions, either to discuss the community's health again in a few weeks or another topic that everyone wants to discuss. Stay tuned in the next couple of days to receive some resources from us, all of the different organizations that Elsie mentioned, that Dr. Pardo mentioned, that Sohami will provide us. We will be sure to compile them for you and send them out. So again, thank you everyone for joining. My name is McElvey Neal, and I'll see you online and hopefully offline too, if you're vaccinated. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.